needs a place. So
Yeah.
you're in charge of how many people enter.
All
so
right,
save
will
a space for Ron if it gets too crowded.
All right, we're live.
And we are live. And originally we were going to have Ron tell his story to start us off, but he's late to the party. We have the lovely Stephanie. We have the nice John Buck, and we're trying the first official Craig Reed open stream. So bring your bad ideas and your bad arguments. They are welcome here. We want to hear the dumb things that you have to say. John, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. I'm John Buck. Somebody that was raised in a very sort of fundamentalist Christian-ish household that took the Bible very literally. And then I sort of came across Jordan Peterson and wanted to become more intellectually supported in my faith. Yeah, exactly. And then came to learn a lot more to the point that now I'm like looking into probably Eastern Orthodoxy or Roman Catholicism in regards to joining a religion. So that's me.
And you kind of believe in the great paradigm in the sky or something, the great hologram, right?
Oh,
or no?
Well, I did do a debate in defense of simulation hypothesis. That was mostly. I mean, I'm still like partially thinking that it's possible, but anyway,
that's a Donald Hoffman one.
Kind of, yeah, that as well. Yeah, like I find idealism, which is Donald Hoffman, also inspiring philosophy. He's an idealist as well. I find that like a plausible philosophy of mind. But anyway, that's just me. And SJ's here as well. You want to introduce yourself, SJ?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for having me. I've been on the channel before, and so I'm really looking forward to this free for all. And so it's free for all. Everybody gets an opportunity to go to heaven.
There you go.
Yes. There you go. And eventually we'll be joined by Ron and whoever else wants to participate in the party. So what should we start off with? Did you guys see that Braxton Hunter stream that Stephanie, what did you do exactly, Stephanie? You had a free-for-all on that 2 days ago, right?
Yeah, because Braxton Hunter, actually, first let me ask, I think there's some people in the chat who, usually what I do when I do this kind of thing is I put the link in the chat and then people can decide if they want to join. I don't know if you guys are going to do it that way, but
yeah.
Because I think you have
John
Spartan
will
Theology.
regulate. So if you tick John off, you're out.
There you go. No mercy either.
Okay, there it is.
No mercy.
So you know what?
If you're,
sorry.
Wait, we just say for the moderators, if you're an official moderator, if you have a wrench, there's going to be a few official things that people are allowed to say. They're allowed to say, that was a brilliant point that Craig made. Wow, Craig is really nailing it with his arguments. I really think Craig is very intelligent. Outside of that, I want you to mute everybody.
There you go.
Go ahead.
All right, everyone with a wrench, keep that in mind. All right.
I see I'm in the chat and I'm the only one with a wrench. So
mute them all, Stephanie.
That's hilarious. So he just opened it up. So no, the thing with Braxton Hunter. So here, let me share some results with you guys. I see if I can do this. I don't know if you've got it set up so that we can share our screens.
Should be able to, yeah. If you
it looks like I can.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can get this. Darn it, is that the right thing? No.
This is the official poll results. Is atheism a worldview?
Yes, I want to show the official poll results because I think people really would be curious to see this. Where did it go? There it is. Okay.
Turns out it is.
It turns out.
Oh, you spoiled it, man.
Is atheism a worldview? So while I'm trying to get this set up, I just wanted to say, so we made a video, and Craig, you were in there too, and we just decided we were going to take a look at whether or not atheism is a worldview. You can see right here, it's looks like the jury went out and they came back, and it's confirmed. 62% indicated that atheism is a worldview. And that's a position that sets up guiding principles in one's life, like what we believe about our origins, ultimate meaning, higher purpose, morality, and destiny. So it's the results, they're there. But we set up that video, and we were looking at, Braxton was looking at a bunch of atheist arguments on the worldview. And so we looked a little bit into the one that he did with Jeff Williams and also Nathan Ormond. I'd be surprised if Nathan doesn't show up today too.
He said he's going to bed, but Vera might show up.
Okay, cool.
It's going to be early for Friday, but I guess it's probably 10 o'clock there or 11 o'clock. Not sure.
Yeah, I have no idea what the time difference is.
Yeah, I think he's 5 or 6 hours ahead. I can never remember. So, okay, so we've got Where are we here? Oh, did Spartan Theology not say something about how great Craig is? Or something?
He said, yeah, he said, what? Craig Reed sucks. Wow, Craig really
Did he
sucks.
really?
Yeah.
Oh,
And so,
totally.
don't
man.
worry.
Forever.
Don't worry. I timed him out for how long is that? 5 minutes? Oops. I thought that there might be an option for like how long you can time somebody out. So sorry, Spartan. I didn't realize my joke.
Sorry, what? He should be apologizing.
True. Yeah, that's true.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, you
They
actually
should
have
have a
some other
pay
people in
option.
here, Craig.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah. Anybody
the
that wants to come
actual-
in.
Come on in.
is somebody
see-
here in the stream or
Spartan
in
said
the
he could
chat?
come in the chat. Digital Hammurabi's in there, your buddy. Gavin Hurleman, Spartan Theology, and Aaron. I think that's the ex-Christian Aaron.
Yeah. Hey, Craig or Stephanie, have you guys seen the debate, like pseudo debate / discussion between Jonathan Peugeot and Rationality Rules?
No, I keep hearing about that though. What happened with that?
It's interesting. Yeah. So Rationality Rules, he's the atheist YouTuber, a British atheist YouTuber. He recently took an interest in Brett Weinstein's understanding of metaphorical truths, which are like beliefs that help a species survive, or even just an individual survive in like reproduction or in evolution. And so from there, John Peugeot, who's like an Eastern Orthodox icon cover and also like a good friend of Jordan Peterson, sort of they reached out and they made a connection to have a discussion. And it was an interesting sort of insight. It seems like Jonathan Peugeot's sort of like perspective that he's taking in defending Christianity or religions in general is just sort of bringing up the point that when we're starting things out, we're starting from a sort of like experiential level of like how things seem to us to be, and in even like in a sort of archaic sort of sense where you go out, walk outside, and you see the sun go across the sky. In a sort of sense, you feel like if taking things at a purely phenomenological or experiential level, you could understand why like in archaic peoples might have held to like a flat earth model or something like that. And so, yeah, it's interesting. He's sort of like defending religion from that sort of first principles sort of experiential basis. And then from there, getting a better understanding of things from there. But yeah, it's kind of frustrating because I don't see how well, like, for one, I don't know how much like rationality rules types are able to sort of track with that sort of way of framing things. And probably a lot of like Christians as well. They're not wanting to argue for like Christianity on that sort of basis. They're actually wanting to argue it from sort of a philosophical or something or level like that. I found it was an interesting conversation between the two of them, at least.
Is that going against, like, when you say that they have an experiential basis, is that, because I haven't heard that argument, is that going against the blank slate argument that people are born with a blank slate? Because that is something that I've heard atheists argue, and I'm not sure why they argue that.
Yeah,
I don't believe it at all.
Yeah, maybe. I think there's probably the understanding that, sure, it might be the case that we experience these sorts of like the term that was typically brought up in the discussion was the archetypes, like the Jungian archetypes of like, oh, the great dragon, the father, the mother, these types of things. We experience the world through these archetypes and understand our relation to the world through these archetypes. But I think the typical understanding is that, like, yeah, sure, these are like ingrained within us originally, but they're still malleable, that we can like convert or like live under different symbolic ways of understanding reality. At least that's sort of the new atheist hope, I think. That I think Jordan Peterson and probably Jonathan Peugeot are maybe like pushing back against that to say, no, these sorts of symbolic ways of understanding reality are ever present within us. I saw that Caleb was trying to come in for a second. I don't know if maybe he had a problem with Zoom. And I see also now Ron has joined, but you're also muted currently, Ron.
It's Ron. Ron is here.
Yeah.
There he is.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can
I
hear
can
you
hear
too,
you.
Craig.
Okay, because I cut out and you guys were cutting out for a while. I missed a lot of the conversation.
I think what he's talking about, what John's talking about a little bit, might have to do with human exceptionalism then. And it's this idea that you look at that, why do humans grasp symbolism, and why do we look at metaphors, and why do we have these archetypes, and why are we like that when animals really aren't? They don't plan for the future in quite the way we do. There's a lot of differences between humans and animals, and I think that speaks to that we're made in God's image. Oh, Caleb's dry apologist. Okay, he says he might try
Yeah.
again.
Okay. Yeah.
Is
And
Ron
Ron-
actually here? Let's
Yeah,
have
yeah,
Ron
he did.
introduce himself.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ron.
I'm Ronald Potts. I'm just here for the fun, I guess. I'm nobody in particular, just someone the Lord saved and brought into his kingdom.
Awesome. Nice to finally meet you, Ron.
Yeah.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah.
This is Ron's first time on my channel, and Ron has a channel, but is it officially a channel, or is it just a thing you're playing around with so far?
I'm still just playing around with it. I haven't really got to an official channel yet.
No, that's good. It's great to finally meet you. We've been interacting for quite a while on social media, so it's always nice to get to meet people in person. Oh, Ron's got the camera on too.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, there we go. There we
So
go.
is this your first time on one of these YouTube kind of chats, or?
Second time. I did one last night, actually.
Oh, cool.
Oh, whose channel did you go on, or did you do it on your channel?
I was on Finding Truth, Santi's
Oh,
deal.
nice. Cool.
Oh, Santi, yeah. Santi's a good guy. Oh, I think you
Yeah,
guys might have
Santi's
mentioned that in
channel
the
is
direct
good
message.
too.
So,
Yeah, we didn't do
Sant-
that one. We did that with Adam Amolingos or whatever. Him and Santi and I did it. Talking about Jehovah's Witness spat that we had recently.
well, this is cool because so far this is a Christian, like we're in a Christian forum. So we're opening it up, man. The atheists, if they want to come in here, we're going to duke it out and really.
Yeah, we'll barbecue. If an atheist dares show his face, we'll barbecue him.
Yeah,
We
we're
will
her face.
barbecue him.
We got Digital Hammurabi and we've got Aaron ex-Christian here. So they
Is
it's pretty
Dr. Josh
scary
officially
coming
an
in.
atheist, or is he?
No, he's agnostic, I think.
Yeah. And we also
By the
have
way,
Mark Angelotti as well, who's also, I think, agnostic/atheist.
Okay. So Ron, what would you say your best argument is against atheism? Just since we got some atheists listening.
or specifically Dr. Josh, if you want to make it personal.
I don't have any opinion on Dr. Josh. Okay, I can't lie. But the lack of meaning, really. I mean, that was what it did for me. I mean, when I examined everything I thought I knew, I realized that everything I thought I knew actually came from Christianity.
Sort of like your understanding of values and like what's good for society and things like that.
Yeah, I was a humanist in the vein of the U.S. Constitution. That was like my highest ideal. And then I realized, well, partially, part of my journey was realizing that whole humanist ideal comes from Christianity, which is true, by the way.
Yeah, no, I believe, I think if you've ever read, I don't know if you've read, have you read Tom Holland's book on Dominion?
I'm listening to it right now anyways. I haven't made
Yeah.
it through all of it.
Because that sounds kind of related. Tom Holland actually is telling people he's happy to identify as a Christian. And I don't know exactly what that means, if it means he's really accepted Jesus as his Lord or if he just likes the Christian culture. But that book really kind of changed his views on Christianity and how it's contributed to the life as we know it today.
Well, see, I did a historical study myself. I've always liked history, but I did a historical study and came to the same conclusions that Tom Holland did in Dominion.
Yeah, I've
But
read
I
a couple
did
other
that
books.
before.
Like Alvin Schmidt's written a book on that, and guy who's been on my channel too, and I'm forgetting his name all of a sudden, Joel Edmund Anderson. He wrote a pretty good book on history and Christianity's contributions. So I'd recommend those books for sure. So Digital
Yeah, some of
Hammurabi
those-
says he could probably come in, but he doesn't have much to add
Yes.
to a philosophical discussion. It's not philosophical anymore. Digital Hammurabi, it's all about you right now.
We'll talk about whatever, Dr. Josh. Come on and join. We won't beat up on you. Or Stephanie might, but I'll hold you back. Stephanie will. I'll intervene between Stephanie and you because she'll be like, "Oh my God, Dr. Josh, let me at him. I'll kill that Dr. Josh."
Oh, that's so funny.
So yeah, I mean, it's almost impossible to. It's basically what Ron is saying. That argument is borderline irrefutable. I mean, when you start looking into it, even if you don't accept the ontology of Christianity, you can't really avoid how fundamental Christianity is to Western civilization. you know, irrespective of whether you think Jesus is Lord or not. So that's where Tom Holland approached it from, and he's, as far as I'm concerned, his arguments are borderline irrefutable, or at least the substance of the ones that I've read.
Yeah,
Well,
no, his arguments are really good. And it's one of the big, huge game changers was the fact that suddenly people were given equal treatment. It's this idea that everyone's treated equally in the eyes of the Lord. And whether you're slave, you're Jew, you're free, you're Greek, anything that you are, we're all considered equal in the eyes of the Lord. And I think that's a really big statement, because before that, people were considered unequal. And if you were poor, you were cursed. And so Christianity really changed a lot of that.
Right. Now what you have done to the least of my children became like a paradigm of society. Like the outcast is as important as the king. Prior to that, I don't even think that entered into anybody's frame of reference at all prior to Christianity.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually definitely a really good contribution.
Another really interesting book that I listened to anyways was Who Is This Man? By John Ortberg. It's about Jesus, and he traces the vast impact of Jesus on Western society. I mean, there's several easy ones, like, you know, Jesus literally split history.
Yeah.
Right.
We mark history by Jesus. And also, like, hospitals and universities, no doubt, were started by Christianity and monks and churches. I mean, that's where it started, especially hospitals. There was no such thing as a hospital at all before Christianity.
Yeah, well, I think they had some sort of health care, but it wasn't open to everybody for sure. It was just for maybe the soldiers that could get health care, but other people couldn't get assisted.
There'd be like the Greek physicians, right? But was that just sort of like you would go to them when you had some sort of ailment and then pay them? Okay.
It'd be like a doctor, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And orphanages.
Yeah, the idea of the orphanages. I think that's one of the nice things that Tom Holland lays out too, because he talks about how the Christians would take it upon themselves to go rescue the people who had been left out to die. They'd been left out for exposure, little infants and stuff like that, and the Christians would take them in rather than let them
Western
just
civilization
get
into
killed.
two halves. So
As well as especially women. I mean, that was a huge deal with Christianity, was women.
Yeah, just look at how, I mean, even if you look today at the countries that aren't steeped in Christianity, like, and how they treat women, look at the Muslim societies and where women are. I think women in Muslim societies, I think that's exactly what Jesus came into when he appeared. JB's in the chat, guys.
That would probably make sense.
I think it's a fair comparison, yeah.
Ron and JB sound somewhat similar. Is it just me, or do their voices sound kind of the same?
Similar regional dialect, I'm sure.
I don't know if I remember what JB sounds like.
Sounds like Ron. Just told you what he sounds like. You don't remember.
He sounds like an intelligent, sexy man.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny. No, that's one of the things that with Christianity, though, and when you say with women, it really is pretty amazing. And I actually, you know what else I was just looking at recently is I looked at this new version of this Passion Bible. Have you guys heard about that? The Passion translation?
Didn't Mike Winger just review it and say it was like, didn't Mike Winger just do a stream on that?
He's about to. He's spending the next few weeks putting something together, and he's actually paid some people to help him digest it. But I thought to myself, okay, what can be so bad? Because Mike Winger didn't say what was wrong with it in this community post that he put up. Oh, I can hear JB on Monday with Tovia Singer. Oh my gosh, we can talk about Tovia Singer too in just a second. But one of the things about that particular translation, I thought, okay, now what is it going to be? Are they going to mistranslate stuff that has to do with homosexuality, or is it going to be stuff that has to do with 1 Timothy 2:12? And sure enough, I go to 1 Timothy 2:12 and I go to another verse, 1 Corinthians 11, and I see that translation. They totally added in that women can be leaders in 1 Corinthians 11. And they
did we say women be quiet in church? We meant women lead the church. That's really how you translate it if you're dealing with the coinage Greek. Oh, how convenient.
Well, I went back and I actually pulled out the Greek to see exactly what they said in the English translations. And then I found some research that was conducted on just this word authority, and that goes back into the ancient times. And it actually, the word was domineer, women were told not to domineer over men in the church. And
Yeah.
Yeah,
but it's just,
I'll amen that.
yeah,
Jennifer.
I don't think we want
Jennifer's
women domineering them. So, yeah, so Tovia Singer, you guys know who that is? JB's going
No.
to be interviewing Tovia on Monday.
Is that a good thing, bad thing? Do we approve of Tobias Singer?
You know who he is? Are you familiar with? Because I'm definitely familiar with him.
I don't think I do. I know who JB is. Do we approve of JB?
Yeah, exactly. Tovia
Does
Singer,
JB have a wrench? Please tell me, John, you didn't give JB a wrench. Please say you didn't.
he does. He has a wrench.
Oh my
Oh
God.
no, he does have a wrench.
Oh God.
No,
That's
we
so
have
power.
two new-
That's power.
Yeah,
Tovia
we have
Singer
two new
is.
guests in the house.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Tovia
Who's
Singer
here?
is a Jew for Judaism who debated Dr. Michael Brown in the early 1990s and lost, and has refused to debate him ever since then. And he debated him on Isaiah 53.
Oh, cool. I'll check that out. I think I've seen that, but haven't streamed it yet. Who's here?
Yeah, I think I've seen that debate.
Yeah, I saw it. I just went and watched it. It's actually posted online. You can get it. It's an oral debate only. So, oh, look at Megan Lewis is here. No, I'm kidding, Josh.
I never know how to work with
Change.
Zoom. Yeah, I'm sure there's a way to do it.
There
think
is.
you
I think
got
you
it.
click on the little 3 dots up at the top right, and I think you can change your name.
And welcome JB as well.
Oh, JB's
Oh,
here.
snap.
Can y'all hear me?
This is going to get confusing. Yeah. We hear you, Ron.
Just Ron and JB are just sharing their voice.
Who did I think JB was the first time JB was on a live stream? Because I never thought your voice would have an accent. The first time I saw you on this, for a while, I thought you were a woman, but that was just because I only knew you from Twitter. And then you were talking to me in the live stream, and I was like, "Who is this guy?" I was like, "Who are you?" And I thought you were someone else, and you're like JB, and I'm like JB. Wait, JB, the JB. Like it took me a while to piece together who you were, but you sound like somebody else that I don't remember who it was that I thought you were.
I don't remember who you thought I was, because I remember it was a live stream with Nathan Orman.
Nathan, yeah,
Rob was in there.
Yeah.
Pine Creek was in there.
yes. You sound like someone. It wasn't somebody positive. It wasn't like someone who I was like, "Oh, cool, I like this guy." It was someone I was like instantly like, "Uh-oh, this guy," and I didn't realize. I don't remember who it was though.
Oh,
Maybe
I'm
Ron.
sorry.
Maybe it was Ron.
Let me-
I didn't know.
Can I say hello
That sounds right.
to Dr. Josh? Hello, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, how are
We've
you?
talked a lot on Twitter, but never in this format.
Yeah, I mean, I keep waiting for that invite, but once I get bigger,
He'll
I
never
guess.
do it.
Once
I
we get Steven
would-
Steen in here, this would all be put together. This is JB and Steven Steen have long history.
Steen won't live stream. I've had those discussions with him.
Yeah, I've tried to get him on my channel a bunch of times. You're right, he won't. He went and he met when Modern Day Debate was in Texas. Steven Steen flew in there and watched that debate. I think it was IP versus Matt Dillahunty.
No, he
that's
did the
cool.
T-jump. He did I know it was at the
T-jump,
T-jump
okay.
one.
Oh yeah.
Because he took pictures with him and T-jump together.
Oh, that's right. Well, was it at the same? Was it around the same time? I guess I forget. Probably.
I don't remember.
How tall is T jump to Steven Steen? Because I think Steven's pretty tall, right? Isn't he?
I don't know.
I gotta watch. I gotta look at the picture now.
And I don't know either.
Ask him. He'll send you the picture.
Yeah, you got to get that. It's too funny. So, Josh, are you totally missing Skylar? Because you guys aren't doing those night streams anymore.
It's weird. I am, but I'm also I'm also free to do a lot of things now, which is interesting. So
I like the idea that Skylar had where he was going to do like a zombie entertainment channel with like zombie films.
yeah,
I'm waiting for that. That'd be great if you guys hook that up.
he's incredibly artistic. And I was actually really excited when he was going to try to explore that a little bit more. So like he's written movie treatments. I think that's what they're called.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
And I think he's halfway through a script. Like he's very clever.
That's cool.
Johnny's our resident script writer too. John's written a few scripts, right?
Yeah, a few. Yeah, actually, Stephanie voice acted.
I was in one.
Of them. Yeah, they're just layman amateur stuff. Like I've written a couple like science fiction ones, and then I wrote one that was just like a philosophical dialogue. And what I want to do is probably do something with it. Like I had this whole script about this like robot in a post-human sort of civilization that I want to do more with. It's kind of like a weird sort of modern take on the story of Theseus, like the mythology of Theseus. But anyway,
I'm also an actor. I'm blowing up on TikTok in my acting as we speak.
Are you actually on TikTok?
Really on TikTok?
I know you.
Yeah, I got a couple of TikToks.
Oh, I got. Are you like
one is a Christian one, and then the other one is just like doing like little sketches and stuff. It's got 14,000 followers so far.
What?
Hey, John Buck. Craig's made 2 TikToks. He's got a Christian one and one where he pretends to be an atheist to get everyone to go to his Christian one.
That's funny.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I had that strategy, and I made a atheist, like a fake atheist Twitter feed, but I never really did anything with it. I like retweeted some stuff, and I was gonna. That was the thing. I was gonna like lure atheists into my Christian trap. Go like, yeah, you really like me, huh? I'm a Christian.
Get your whole claim to fame. Like how this one atheist turned into the greatest Christian apologist of all time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a great idea. Go, I used to be an atheist, but you.
So, Dr. Josh, you're saying you have a lot more time now. What's sort of the projects that you're working on now that you've got a little bit more free time?
So I'm writing 2 more books. The first one is sort of tying together. I've made a bunch of videos like on Ezekiel 26 and Daniel and slavery and blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to try to condense each of those kind of down to a chapter and put together sort of, I don't know, like I'm working with the title, The Bible Says What? Something like that. But then I'm doing like an introduction to the Code of Hammurabi.
Cool.
Yeah, that one I'm really excited about. So there's like a 1950s commentary on it, like an in-depth commentary on it, but there really hasn't been a lot since in that vein. And not that I'm going to write like a scholarly level commentary that would take quite a bit of time and research, but an introductory sort of thing where a lay person or a non-specialist that's interested can open it up and say, all right, what is this law talking about in general? So, but it'll have my own translation of it. So yeah, it should be cool.
That's good.
Both of those sound really interesting.
Yeah, it does. So
it'll give you guys some video fodder, you know, you can be like, all right,
yes,
wham.
Yes, I love it. That's like that's like Stephanie's and I's main project. Dr. Josh has got something, and then we're like, buzz, 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 destroy.
Yeah, I haven't done that in a while, because I remember when I first got on Twitter and I first started interacting with atheists, I spent a lot of time writing responses, like writing blog responses, and then I started doing video responses. And then I just one day just got kind of bored of it and stopped. But I was doing video responses every time I would see Dr. Josh's Daniel stuff.
Get it.
That was kind of fun.
No, that was good. It's good to have that kind of challenge, you know. So
didn't you debate Dr. Brown, Dr. Josh?
I mean, I don't know that I'd call it a debate. We had a discussion where we both tried to find as much common ground with each other as humanly possible, which I caught a lot of flack for. But
it was good.
That was good.
You did? You caught flack? Why'd you catch flack?
Oh, you should have hammered him on this, and you should have hammered him on that. I'm like, I don't know. Some people said some people said I sounded like a schoolgirl that was in love. Like I did the debate like this, you know.
You know, it's tough going on modern day debate. He actually asked me to come on there in a couple of weeks, and I haven't responded because I thought I don't know, the crowd in modern day debate, the people in the chat are just like brutal.
Yeah, there's this guy Steven Steen that's just the worst.
Yeah, he's ridiculous. That guy's like such a troll.
What are you saying,
Let him know.
Judah?
We're talking about him.
I was saying James built that whole thing with Dr. Josh and Dr. Brown. Like it was like this huge like Clash of the Titans like fight to the death battle.
It was so funny because like James reached out to me. I think that must have been after the debate that Skylar and I had with Praise and Jill, and said, I've got, Michael Brown, I could probably get him to debate you on this. And I wrote back immediately and was like, I'm not interested in the debate, like I suck at debates, but I'm having really no interest in debating him on that. I said, I'll have a discussion if he wants to. Oh yeah, it'll be. Next thing I know, there's a trailer that comes out, and the atheist, the Christian, ding, 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 ding. And I was like,
let them fight. That's so funny.
And he called you an atheist instead of an agnostic?
Yeah. I mean, I think probably by, I don't know about most, but by many definitions, I guess I'm an atheist. But I mean,
hey, little selfless plug here. If y'all want to figure all that out, Steve McRae's actually coming on my channel on the 17th to discuss agnosticism.
Yes.
But I don't think he has strong feelings on the definition of atheism, does he?
No, I don't think he does.
Not in the least.
Whenever I'm bored, a lot of times I'll go to Steve McRae's timeline, and it just is so funny. He's always battling people. It's like every day.
I had to take him off my list because it was so entertaining. And like last December, I swear to God, like 3 straight months, I'd just read Steve McRae stuff, and I'd be there for like 2.5 hours because he'd get in these fights about agnostic atheism, and they were so fun. Like I just waste endless hours. So yeah, I agree. I had to stop myself because they were too entertaining.
He's got, who here's who the theists are that all the atheists right now are paying attention to is Braxton Hunter. Braxton Hunter puts out a video and like a zillion atheists respond. And the other one is what's that guy, Smokey Saint. You guys seen anything by these guys?
I haven't watched Smokey's yet.
Smokey's got a little war going right now with Nakasuchi. I don't know if you've kept up with that a little bit, but they keep going back and forth. So that's kind of a funny little deal to watch.
Who's
too.
Nakasuchi?
The Raging
Atheist.
Oh, he's been inviting me on his live streams actually, and I kept meaning to go. I think they're on Wednesday nights.
He's pretty.
I assume that you would just clear your schedule to go on Pine Creek's channel, Craig. I mean, like you guys get along so well.
Yeah, exactly.
That's another one.
I watched a stream with you guys that I kept going, ooh, what? Because I liked everybody in the room, and I was like, "Geez, this is tense."
We almost got along last time.
But that was the one that I jumped into too. You were.
Yeah, Stephanie jumped in to save me. She bailed me out, but we almost got along. I think I started shouting, and then the phone cut out, so it stopped me from shouting. And then Stephanie jumped in, so then I was blasted after that.
You know what's so funny, Craig, is I look at your Twitter. It says something like calm and mellow. And I'm like, and then I hear
it does. And unless I'm not. Except for this one time. Hey, you talking to me? We're getting knocked out? Yeah, calm and mellow. What's it?
Like Brooklyn comes out and starts a roar.
Oh, Craig's great with his videos though, where it's like he's all riled up, and then like 2 seconds later, he's singing like a song from like the 80s, right. And then he's like,
right. I mean, that's what I explained in the video. If that sounds like I'm shouting, it's also Italian too. That's not shouting. It's New York and Italian. It's like, my wife knows I'm not shouting. Yeah, it means having a good old time. Until it hits a certain register. But JB, by the way, I was telling Stephanie about your little wager with Scene. Do you want to explain it to her? Because it was really fun. The one about Ohio and Trump, where he had to put Black Lives Matter on his Twitter feed.
He actually used it was a photo that I think Jim Majors photoshopped, and it was him in a Clemson uniform because he's an Ohio State fan, with Donald Trump in the picture with him. And because he's from Ohio, so we made the wager. I kept telling him that Trump was going to win Ohio, and he kept telling me that it wasn't. So we made an agreement that we were placing a bet on Ohio. So if Trump won, then I got to change his profile picture for a week. And if Trump didn't win Ohio, then he would be able to tell me what was my profile picture for a week.
Classic.
Didn't you also make him a member of Black Lives Matter in a different picture?
No, I didn't. Did I? I don't think I did.
Oh, I thought you did.
But I wrote this whole big old thing talking about it, and I was like, I said, Satan and myself have convinced Stephen Steen against his better judgment to start gambling and place a wager on the election.
Now, the funny thing about I was going to say, you just mentioned Jim Majors. Has he sort of disappeared? Because I haven't seen him in a long time. He's kind of like Skylar dropped off.
His dad passed away, and he said he was taking a bunch of time away from Twitter.
Oh, okay.
Social media.
Oh, that's terrible.
And he came back for a couple of days, and everybody was like, "Hey, how you doing?" He's like, "I'm fine. I wanted to take a little bit of time away from doing funeral planning and try to deal with some not so stressful stuff." So yeah, he had it bad. Like he had, what was it, a goat that he's had for like 12 years pass away one night, and then the very next day he found out his dad passed away.
That's terrible.
So I was like, ouch.
I have my husband grew up, his mom is in the same house that my husband grew up in. His mom's dad built that house in the 60s. And so they've just been in this house forever. And so they know all the neighbors, and a lot of the neighbors around them are the same. And over this past year, the neighbors have across the street on one way, the last name is Palermo, and they have 3 sons. One of the sons lost his wife to cancer, and they just lost the dad to, and I'm not sure, I don't know exactly what he died of, but he just passed away too. And this is all just like within this year. I mean, 2020 is just really awful, I have to say.
Wow.
It's just tough. Yeah, let's figure out if we can go to some lighter stuff now, I guess, right? Sorry.
I saw Robin today.
Dr. Josh, does Dr. Josh have any thoughts on biblical slavery?
Just a couple, right?
It's not something I've really looked into recently.
Or
talked
discussed.
about on 86 different streams.
So the one thing I was going to ask you, Josh, it looked like he was going to start a entertainment-based channel. Is that, because I think that's a great idea, and I'll show up and be part and watch and comment and stuff. Is he going to do that or no?
Skylar?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's going to. I think he's going to try to use digital fiction as that platform. But I don't see, he's moving. He's in the process of moving and like moving cross country.
Colorado. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it might be. I texted with him a couple of days ago. But yeah, I think so.
Is didn't you, I think I heard him say something, or somebody said something like you influenced him to go back into teaching. And so, or to go into teaching? Is that what he's looking for? I mean, job?
Yeah, I didn't do that intentionally. If I did, but no, he's going back and finishing his degree up, and yes, that's pretty exciting. It's fun to before the last maybe 3 or 4 streams that we did. I'd come in the room and we kind of chat about what we were going to talk about, and we'd use most of the time. He'd talk about like the latest thing that he read. In American history or something, or European history. And it was just, he was so excited. It was cool to see him like really excited about something that he was
that's cool,
really into, clearly. So
is that what he would teach, a history class, maybe to high school, or?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't even know that he would know that yet, but that's what I would think, just given the path. Well, yeah,
teaching is a great job. I mean, that's I speaking from someone who does that. I love the job. It's awesome.
Yeah. Tomorrow,
the students we're doing a virtual commencement tomorrow. Our students in our university, which is kind of sad because we can't be there to congratulate them. Can you imagine if you were going through college right now as a young, an 18-year-old or something like that?
Oh yeah, high school graduation, senior prom. They had this like fake prom that my wife went to. Or not prom, fake graduation where you were in your cars or something with one of her friend's daughters. Totally
Yeah.
ruins like some of the rites of passage of being that age. Totally destroys it.
Oh yeah, because my kids at one point they were trying to get back into being normal, and so they went to the mall this weekend and they did all this stuff, and then one of them came down with COVID. So
Yeah,
Jeez.
I was just gonna say that, like
it's just terrible.
playfully, like, so they went and did all this stuff, and I'm like, and they got COVID, right? Yeah, they did.
Yeah, and they got COVID, and then we were locked down for 2 weeks because one had COVID, and then right when the other one went back, he's back to school for 2 days, and then he was exposed to somebody else who had COVID, so he had to come home for another 2 weeks. I mean, it's just, ugh. I cannot wait to get out of this, get this vaccine out and get back to normal. I heard Fauci say that we might be back to normal by September.
This
That'd be cool.
September or next September? I guess next September.
Yeah, next September.
Yeah, that'd be great for the school year and stuff like that. Oh, we got somebody new here.
Yeah, we
Who's
got
there?
Ethan,
Yes.
Spartan Theology.
Hello.
Oh,
Apparently
awesome.
You got my wife here, but that's what it says at the bottom, at least.
Yeah.
What does it say? Your wife?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Patricia.
It says Patricia Bergen at the bottom of my name on Zoom.
Yeah.
Get
And
my wife in here. That'd be crazy. Oh my God.
and
I can't even
JB
imagine.
had to leave, but he might be coming back in a bit.
Okay.
Salem in chat, he actually had a question for Dr. Josh. Can you, what books would you suggest for beginners trying to get into the ancient Near East studies? And he's saying he really enjoyed your interview with Joel Baden.
Oh, cool. I mean, like from the side of history, just to sort of get a good layout for what happened. There's a book by Mark van der Meerop. I think it's just called A History of the Ancient Near East. But that's excellent. It's not written, I guess, strictly. It's not a popular level book, but it's pretty understandable. It's what everybody reads first year. And then if you're looking to get into the languages, I guess I could, if they wanted to email me about specific languages, I could give book recommendations. But yeah, that's probably a good place to start. Also, it's a little dated, but Elio Oppenheim's book, I can't believe I forgot the name, Portrait of a Dead Civilization. There it is. And we did a video series where we summarized each chapter of the book, and that's a playlist on our channel. So you could do it that way too. Those two books are pretty good.
And the focus of that one is also to do with history, or?
It's got a chapter on history, but it's more about like what are omens, and how is it that like he's got, what are his chapters on?
Like kind of getting you into the ancient Near East mindset.
Yeah, it's more from a cultural. It's
that's
sort of
great.
broad range of things. Kingship, the idea of kingship, the literature, that sort of thing. So
it's interesting. Now, I know there's something I had heard about the Code of Hammurabi that I don't know how much this is true, but like I had heard that the code itself differs quite greatly from like the way that we have like legal codes or things like that, where you have some like set of laws, and then anytime somebody breaks that law, then they're like going to be punished for that crime or something like that. Whereas the Code of Hammurabi is more of a, I guess, structured set of guidelines or something like that, where the it was like understood as like this way of approach in making judgments is like, oh, you would use the code in order to sort of like make similar types of judgments or something like that. Now, I'm not sure.
No, it's you got it. You got it.
It is okay.
So yeah, there are different views on what ancient Near Eastern law collections, codes, whatever, are doing. I don't think there's anybody that thinks they're actually a code. It was just sort of a name that was plugged in early on, so people use it, so people understand it. There's a very recent book out by Pamela Barmash. It's a 2020 publication. I think it's just called The Laws of Hammurabi. But it's sort of a very broad introduction to the laws. But basically, I think what everybody would say is they're not normative legislation. Like it's not like somebody comes up and says, hey, this guy, stole my slave. What do I do? And the judge goes, hang on a second.
let me consult the text.
Yeah. Okay. It says right here that what I'm supposed to do is like that's nobody thinks. I don't think there's anybody that thinks that's what they were used for, or at least very few people. Most would probably say that it sort of reflects the broad legal tradition that stood behind them. But even then, we had a guy on, student of Bruce Wells, down in Texas, called Jay Caballero, and he came on, and I asked him this question, and just because that's what he does. He does ancient Near Eastern and Hebrew Bible law, and he's writing his dissertation now on like sexual criminal acts in ancient Near Eastern law, including the Hebrew Bible. So he's going to have a big section on like rape in the Hebrew Bible. So I'm really excited about it. But yeah, nope. I think that's the big thing that most everybody would agree on. It's not, like when they, it's not like law being promulgated or something. You do have laws that are like that. They're more like edicts. That the king says, okay, all the debt slaves are freed. That's that's a law that's going out. I think these are probably just collections of judgments that Hammurabi made, or that Lipit Ishtar made, or whatever, or Namu made, to show that he was a good, righteous shepherd over his people. That was probably too long-winded. Sorry.
No. Yeah. So I don't know how much it is, but like, could it also be that some of these like legislations that are written down could be like sort of metaphorically or falsely attributed to Hammurabi as well, just because like, oh, he's held up as like this wise king. We're going to implement, like, we need some sort of rule of law. We're going to say that he made this command or something like that.
Probably not, only because the laws come from that period.
Okay.
I mean, they come from him, and they were. I think what makes it difficult is that what makes it great and what makes it difficult is that, like, unlike the New Testament or unlike the Hebrew Bible, we're working with very early original sources, right? So you're working with the actual, legal tablets. So we have cases like clay tablets that have cases, contracts, or, judgments. And a lot of times they don't match up with what's actually on, in these law codes, these law collections. Not always, they don't always differ, but it's dissimilar enough that it causes people that work in this field to go, what is this exactly? But no, I think that you can pretty safely.
We know about their legal system, like how it worked overall. In that, like people went on trial, they got put in prison. Do we know stuff about that?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's a lot more. I think it's a lot easier to get. Let me, I guess, contrast a little bit. It's difficult when you come to the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament, because it's a later. We're working with copies as opposed to the autographs, and so like there's a group of people that lived in Elephantine down in Egypt in the 5th century. And like, you can look at, we have like archaeological evidence of them, and we can look at the Aramaic writings that they have from that period. And we can say, okay, what is it that they did? So, they have a letter written saying, how should we practice this particular festival? Right. And so the question then is, well, wait a minute, it doesn't seem like that necessarily matches up with some of the things that we see in Leviticus or what we see in Exodus or something. And so trying to get at the distinction between what we see in the Hebrew Bible and what was practiced, it's harder to get at that. In like ancient Mesopotamia, where you have the actual, clay documents, you can actually make that comparison and say, okay, this comes from Hammurabi's reign. It's dated to Hammurabi's 5th year, because they date those things. And then, this is this code of Hammurabi is in the 50th year of his reign. So like, where are they the same? Where are they different? How can we structure things? What were the penalties and all that stuff? So,
right. What you had brought up there reminds me of, I guess, sort of this somewhat controversy within like the Old Testament. It's the understanding of like, what is the main difference between what were the practices of the Israelites in their like monotheism, like how monotheistic were they in practice versus how monotheistic are they in writing, where there's sort of this maybe evidence to suggest that the people did hold to sort of maybe a henotheism or sort of like still worshiping other gods, despite in the text, like it written in such a way to sort of show that very much this.
Well, that's why there's all these warnings about worshiping other gods, because there's always like folk religions that even happens in Catholicism. Like that's where the worship of saints came in, you know. Technically it's monotheistic and it's Jesus, and then, you know, but as a practical matter, like someone in 1400s is taking a journey and they like, well, let's pray to the patron saint of the journey, you know, it just sort of naturally starts. And
also like within Catholicism, like I think if you lose something, you're supposed to pray to Saint Anthony or something like that, and then that'll help him, like he'll help you find it or something similar to that. I wouldn't say that's exactly like worshiping the saints, but it is still at least paying them some reverence, something like that. Anyway,
it's treating them as intercessories, so they're the intermediaries. And it actually, whoever posted that in that direct message, that posted that yesterday with the heresies that are coming out of all of these different faiths, and it's one Bible verse can prove that this particular strand of Christianity is a heresy. Did you guys? You're in that same. Did you see that from yesterday?
No. Who said that?
Message. Oh, what's her name?
That was a cult.
It was the one on the cult. Wasn't it? Ron was in there. Ron, you were in there.
Yeah. It was cults, not heresy necessarily, but yeah.
I
saw it because they had charismatics in there, and that's, you know, me.
Well, I'm a former Catholic. I don't really consider Catholics cults.
She proved that Ron was a heretic? She proved Ron was a heretic or somebody else?
Well, they were focusing on like JWs. It was actually kind of a cool little thing, because it was like, here's JWs. Here's a verse that doesn't go in line with that. Here's what the Mormons say. Here's a verse in the Bible that discredits.
Oh, that whole stream with Santi and Ron and that woman. Yes, I saw some of it.
No, that wasn't it.
No, it wasn't. It was a direct message. It was in the direct message group.
It was just like a image that was showing like, here's what they believe and here's where that contradicts like the Bible verses.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
It was pretty good. So I'm curious on Spartan theology. Spartan, are you a Michigan State or University of Tampa Spartan by chance?
No, Clemson stuff behind me.
Oh, okay. So how did you get the name Spartan?
I grew up in a town called Spartanburg.
Oh,
That's
okay.
literally it. We were actually talking about this last night in Dry Apologist stream.
Yeah, we were all like theorizing about like, okay, what does this mean? He's a Spartan. He's like willing to like fight like a Spartan for his faith or something like that. Like, nope, just the town I'm from.
So wait, you grew up in Spartanburg and your name is Ethan Bergen, and so you're Spartanbergen.
There you go. There you go.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, the question I was asking Josh, I guess I didn't really formulate it too well into a question, but something to do with like the differences between practices and like what might be written in the text. And is there other like similar things like that maybe within Akkadian literature, or I guess a lot of the evidence or a lot of the text that we would have is mostly from Jewish sort of history?
I mean, so there's as far as like Israelite religion, there is a brand new book. I think it came out maybe in June by one of my old professors. It's sort of his magnum opus of his career, Ted Lewis, and it's called The Origin and Character of God, I think. But it's like over 1,000 pages. It's been a long time coming, but this is what he does. So he's like a Hebrew Bible and Ugaritic specialist, and so he's that's what he does. So that is like the whole focus of the book, is trying to distinguish between what we see in the Hebrew Bible and what was practiced on the ground. So like sort of outside of things like Baal worship or worshiping Asherah or something, in the Hebrew Bible itself, you have like at Kintilat Ajrud, the Egyptian fort or whatever. You have like a drawing of these divine.
Hold on, Stephanie. I think you're like sharing the screen. Okay, there you go.
I was trying to stop sharing it. Just showing
That's
that thing that we were talking about yesterday.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, sorry. All right.
It says like Yahweh and his Asherah. So trying to like grapple with what is the Hebrew Bible doing? So, looking at passages like Deuteronomy 32 and what is it that, the later writers are doing. Deuteronomy 32, I think, is really interesting in and of itself. Not that it's like an expertise of mine or anything, but, trying to get at what, this El and Yahweh and, what is the relationship between them? Right. Is it the same deity or is it two deities? And I think it's interesting because I think it preserves, I think probably most scholars have to think about it, but I think probably most scholars would argue that it's preserving that tradition of, distinct deities. But Deuteronomy 32 is, I think, very consciously trying to preserve that tradition, but yet morph it maybe into say, I think Deuteronomy 32 is saying Yahweh and El are the same.
Yeah, it's funny. I was just like reading the Bible the other day. Somebody pointed this out to me. It's funny. You read like Deuteronomy 32:8 or something like that. In a lot of translations, I'll read it now. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, he divided the sons of man. He set the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. So it's like this weird sort of picture of like God, like or Yahweh sort of like splitting up parts of the nations to these sons of God, which seems like pretty radical when thinking about it from a like purely monotheistic sort of like perspective. But in like other translations, the last like phrase there will say usually like sons of man or something like that instead of sons of God or to the children of Israel. So it's like very sort of different, like, I don't know, it's sort of one of those verses that just coming at it from sort of a modern sort of very monotheistic perspective doesn't make a lot of sense, but it is interesting to like see that. And also like the whole divine council sort of stuff presented by like Michael Heiser or something like that. It's really interesting, like new ways to sort of approach the understanding of the Israelites and the Bible itself.
Yeah. And I think what makes it.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Michael Heiser, like starts with that in a lot of Deuteronomy 32, like worldview or whatever. That's like, he talks about that all the time and how that like translation of sons of Israel is just not right at all. It's just people trying to like essentially make sense of something that doesn't make sense. So, but that's all I was really going to add.
Sorry, I lost it muted or said it. You guys asked me a question, I didn't hear it. Sorry.
No, yeah, we were just mentioning how the phrase "sons of Israel" there is just doesn't really work at all. It does seem to be like indicating the sons of God, as if there is sort of this like there's this the divine council of like God and these other types of like demigods of some sort.
And I think that's what is perhaps the most interesting aspect of this is trying to see what it is that Second Temple Judaism is wrestling with and where, how that theology is sort of, morphing slowly. But as far as like Mesopotamian theology, because it's much, we have a much longer track record, actually written history or, written source material, you can track it maybe much more precisely. And there are different theologies based on different regions. And again, that's a whole like separate specialization in the field of Assyriology. And of course, that book that I mentioned by Oppenheim, he has a chapter that's called Why a Mesopotamian Religion Should Not Be Written. And it's sort of an extreme position. I think most people would say it's a little too extreme, but he makes a good point that there's not this, I think people also wrestle with this in the Hebrew Bible. there's not this homogenous, unified theology of Mesopotamian religion, right? You know, or the theology of Mesopotamian people. It changes both synchronically and diachronically, and you know, trying to make all the pieces fit together is futile, because different people had different ideas, and you see this, in my opinion, and I think like most scholars would say, you see a lot of arguing voices in the Hebrew Bible as well. So,
yeah, that's kind of the interesting thing about it, is the Bible is very much a sort of dialogue between many different sorts of perspectives. Like you'll have the sort of like ecclesiastic or like ecclesiastic and arguing the sort of like pessimistic, nihilistic, sort of fatalistic, like poetic. And then you'll also have like the Song of Psalms and or the Song of Songs and the Book of Psalms and these praises and different things like that. It's really interesting. Like you do get a wide sort of
it's a tapestry. It's
Yeah.
a whole bunch of different. I actually agree with Skylar's take on the Book of Job. I don't know if you remember that, Dr. Josh, when you guys were doing that last year. I was on pretty much the same page as you guys.
Yeah. I was very, I always think to myself, well, I must have misunderstood what, you know, in this case, what Mike was saying. And I always feel like I need to say this. I like Mike a lot, Inspiring Philosophy. But like I had to go back and re-listen to it.
I think I like Michael Jones is probably the best, outside of myself, probably the best Christian channel out there. I mean, myself first, and then him. But there are a couple times where you guys were basically right. The whole point of the book, as far as I'm concerned, is that Job is why do the righteous suffer? So to kind of make it that he wasn't really righteous doesn't quite get to the point.
And I can kind of understand like what Mike is doing in like trying to read the Old Testament book, the Book of Job, from a Christian perspective. And you see that a lot, like within a lot of Christianity, is like reading the old from what we know from the new. But I think in order to sort of understand the Book of Job as like a text, you have to understand it from within the culture of the people that have written it. And so in that case, then Josh and Skylar are right on point that the Book of Job is not this sort of like Christian text in this. It's a very like Jewish text in a sort of way that like it has this sort of dark cynicism and almost like affability to it. And I really like it. It's a really cool, and like
it's totally awesome.
The Book of Job is also a sort of like weird sort of book. Like if you were to try to get your theology from as well, because like it starts off with like Satan coming up to God and then God like making a bet with Satan. It's like, what is going on here? It's good. But it's somewhat of an anomaly with the rest of the way that suffering is presented in a lot of the Bible. Like, what was the term that you used, Josh? The reciprocal justice or something? Like normally the biblical thing is, you know,
a reciprocity.
Right. It normally the normal thing in a lot of the Bible is if you live right and do right, you know, that God will honor you, and you know you'll have your struggles, but you're not going to have like terrible suffering, a la Job. And this is kind of like, well, what about when that seems to go totally awry? And that's what it's trying to answer with in the deepest possible way.
And
where
this
puts you right up. Go ahead.
No, sorry, Craig. I thought.
No. Go ahead.
We see this in, you know, Akkadian literature, right? So from probably the late second millennium, you know, you have these like the poem of the righteous sufferer, right? Or dialogues that talk about this sort of pessimism that is like, well, you know, I'm really suffering. Well, I'm really pious and I serve Marduk and I worship, you know, and I offer the right, I perform the right rituals, and yet this guy over here is, and the response is, well, you know, keep serving Marduk because you must be doing something wrong, you know, and this back and forth of, you know, why the righteous suffer.
And that's the standard Christian answer. Like if you have like a really bad situation, you go to church, inevitably someone's going to say, well, what sins did you commit? What sins were you doing? Why did God allow that to happen to you? And this is trying to actually take it from the opposite point of view, that sometimes, the moral order of the universe seems upended, at least temporarily. And that's what it's trying to wrestle with. So he kind of undercut the whole point of the book in some ways.
Yeah. And that's I think for me anyway, I feel like a lot of people, when I put a video out, people will come to me with theological solutions, which is fine. Like Ezekiel 26 is probably a standard example, about the prophecy of Tyre. Right. I don't want to get into it here or step on anybody's toes, but
get him, Stephanie, get him.
she had to leave for a second to make dinner. So
she did. Oh,
yeah.
she would have nailed him.
Definitely. I know. I foresee a video.
It came out of your mouth, and you're like, "Wait, I didn't mean to say that. I didn't mean to say that. Didn't mean to go down that rabbit hole."
But the thing is, in scholarship, that's not a point of contention, right? It's not a point of contention that Ezekiel said Nebuchadnezzar was going to do it, and then Nebuchadnezzar didn't do it, right? Like everybody knows that it's not debated. What is debated is why, right? So, you read an article by Robert Chisholm or something, and he ties it into a broader theological concept of prophecy is contingent. Right. So you look at, Jonah and Nineveh, and Jonah says, yet 40 days and this will be destroyed. Nineveh repents. So, that prophecy, that threat is nullified. Right. And so they, sort of a broad connection. Okay, well, this must have been what happened to Tyre. And he makes the comment, we don't know exactly what happened with Tyre. They did capitulate eventually, and so maybe that was sufficient. But, it's a theological approach. And, the same is true, I think, on a lot of these sort of passages. Slavery, obviously, is one of them where, well, when you come to that and you say, well, I think, God is sort of working with the people until, well, those are theological answers. And I'm not saying that that's wrong necessarily, but I always have to say, that's not really my interest, because I'm not a theologian. What I'm trying to just get at is, all right, what are the data points, and what's the argument that we have to start with? Right? We have to start with this. This is what the text is saying. Now, if God does something different with it later in your theological interpretation, awesome, run with it. But we have to at least agree, I think, in the beginning on what is the text in its original setting saying.
Yeah.
So. Well, it's trying to with the book of Job, it's trying to reconcile the theology in a way more complex way, not so straightforward and cookie cutter, because it'd be easy to reconcile otherwise. Why did this bad thing happen? Well, that guy's evil. That's why.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's like Job is sort of like going against his friends as well, that are sort of taking a sort of theological approach to suffering, but Job's responding to that in a very human sort of way.
Mm-hmm. Right. Standard theological answers are what they're supposed to represent, as far as I've always read it.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting though. Why is it in the book?
Yeah.
What's that?
Why is it? The question is, why is Job, which is so different in a lot of these respects, in the Bible still?
Was there a debate? Does anybody know that? Was that one of the books that were put on a shelf and they said maybe this goes in, maybe it doesn't? Anyone?
Dr. Josh? Heard anybody? That the Book of Job is one of the oldest books, but I don't know how accurate that is. Maybe Josh would be able to say better.
I mean, I think most scholars would say it's transitional biblical Hebrew. So, you have the Pentateuch would be, and I think this is just sort of broad mainstream. There are probably people that are going to say that certain books are written later, but I think most scholars would say that the Pentateuch is sort of classical biblical Hebrew. Mm-hmm. So sort of the same as inscriptional biblical Hebrew or inscriptional Hebrew, and then transitional biblical Hebrew is Persian period, and then late biblical Hebrew would be Daniel or Chronicles or And I know that's all hotly
Okay.
debated in these circles. But there's a book by Jan Houston, which I don't know if, but anyway, it's called "When Was the Bible Written?" And he goes, or how old is the Bible? I can't remember the title, but it's something like that. And he goes through and he's looking linguistically and syntactically, grammatically, those sorts of features, and saying, what is it that we do with this text, and how do we sort of place those books? So there's probably more than anybody wanted to know.
No, it's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. We were talking about Job and the sort of like existentialism in it as well. It's funny. I had read the Epic of Gilgamesh, probably like a horrible translation, and it was just something almost on a lark. And it's funny how much you get that same sort of like existentialist sort of like question of suffering there within it as well. And it's very cool to see that, like, even this, like one of the oldest texts that's out there, and it still has this like really perennial sort of questions that we have all the time. Like you read Tolstoy's Confession or something like that, and he deals with the same sort of things, and Ecclesiastes as well. And like I mean, suffering is always going to be sort of the biggest question in regards to human existence. But it's so cool too, the Epic of Gilgamesh, how sort of how it responds to suffering as well, with like the hope for immortality, and like, yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff in that. And also, especially as somebody who's sort of like grown up from a more literalistic, fundamentalist way of reading the Bible, seeing the connections between the Epic of Gilgamesh, which ostensibly is not like part of the Jewish canon or anything like that, and the similarities to what you find in Genesis as well, with kind of the mythology of the Adam and Eve story, kind of, but also with like the story of Noah as well, particularly.
It's really interesting, and this is one of the reasons that I love being an Assyriologist, is, again, working with this sort of source material. The Epic of Gilgamesh is probably written around 1200, maybe. You have an old Babylonian epic. I don't, it's not my expertise, the differences between those, but we seem to have an epic, 600 years earlier, roughly. But, the Gilgamesh stories were originally these Sumerian stories that were sort of individual stories, so, Gilgamesh and the Bull of Heaven was its own story. So that scene in the Epic of Gilgamesh where they, fight against the Bull of Heaven and kill it and piss Ishtar off, that was a Sumerian story all its own. Gilgamesh and Huwawa is, when he goes and fights, they go and fight in the cedar forest. And what's interesting is when we have them, right? We have those Sumerian tablets, lots of copies of them. And to be able to then fast forward 700 years maybe, and look at the tablets that we have of the Epic of Gilgamesh, which are also very well preserved, and see how that editor took those individual Sumerian stories and wove them into this Akkadian narrative, and what he did to make his point. It's very interesting. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but my 7-year-old loves to watch it every night at dinner. I did a rap about Gilgamesh. Has anybody seen that? Where I rap the
I
main
want to
points
now.
of-
I haven't. No, I have not. That's awesome.
Maybe I shouldn't have said
Here's
that.
a little story about a scholar like me. You never should have been let out the penitentiary. Dr. Johnson, I'd like to say, I'm a crazy mother from around the way since I was a youth. Is that it?
It's interesting that you started off, here's a little story, because that's how it starts.
Yeah,
Here's a
see,
little story about
I
Gilgamesh.
know. You and I are on the same wavelength. We're both gangster like that. I know how you roll.
But it's cool because the way that the text puts it is structured, it begins and it ends in the same way. So it creates this, I can't remember the term, but it's like
it completes the writer
Titus
cycle, sort of.
Yeah, like the Arch of Titus or whatever, where you get to the end and you're supposed to start at the beginning again. And it's
that's
that.
the hero's journey, really. Is like you leave home and then return back home with having learned something new.
And that's exactly what he does. And it's really interesting how how the editor brings those pieces together and talks about this immortality and how to gain it. And it's, through being known. And I remember telling my 13-year-old, well, the reason that Gilgamesh lives on, as far as he's concerned, is because we're talking about it right now.
Yeah.
We're talking about him. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I should let other people talk because I'm talking way too much.
Is Spartan still here?
Yeah, I am. I was just listening. That was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm curious about the guy that I brought up. I really like that dude. Do you know who I'm talking about from last week?
Stephen Nemesh. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to tell us about him?
Yeah, he was super interesting. It's like stuff I didn't know much about. He talked about phenomenology, and then like how he applied that to scripture. And yeah, I don't know. Like, it's hard. I wouldn't do much justice trying to describe what we talked about because I didn't know much about it beforehand, and it really like intrigued me. But I'm only gonna learn so much while I'm interviewing someone for an hour. I'm not gonna immediately become an expert, but yeah, it was definitely interesting. I definitely recommend people, check it out because it was something I didn't know about. It's his dissertation topic, and he had never like talked about it on a stream or anything before. So yeah, but I don't know. Like, I'm pretty new to philosophy as it is, and I'm not like extremely into like analytic philosophy. And then he was talking about continental philosophy, which is like a whole nother can of worms that I literally know nothing about. So to like go into someone's dissertation topic knowing literal none of the basics, I would just butcher it, to say the least. But yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think. Yeah, he talked a lot about like how to the difference. He like talked about how like the difference between like just the words of the Bible and like actual like.
So I go back to it
Bible.
time and time again. What's that?
I don't know. Yeah, go ahead. I don't know what you were gonna say. I was trying to think of like something specific, but yeah, like I said, I probably wouldn't do it justice. So might as well ask him.
Yeah, I'll probably investigate him. Try to get him on the channel.
He was pretty easy to get in contact with on Facebook. So.
Well, all you got to know about continental philosophy is it's wrong.
Well, there you go. I guess I know everything now.
It's horrible.
Now, continental philosophy is like pretty interesting. I mean, there's a lot of like really interesting thinkers in there. Like you got Heidegger, Nietzsche, Sartre. You got Hegel.
See?
Yeah. All wrong, all of them. Yeah. So, Ronald.
Yeah.
Is it the case that you came into Christianity through the likes of Jordan Peterson? Is that what I hear?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Well, it started with Jordan Peterson, particularly his Bible series, which got me to take the Bible seriously, which I never done. And then I actually went through Jonathan Pajot and then the Bible.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing with like Jordan Peterson. He's approaching the Bible not at all like a scholar or even as a theologian or anything like that, but rather as like a psychologist or like some sort of sociologist in a weird sort of way. And like I think a lot of the stuff that he like when he does try to like speak on things from either a theological or even a historical perspective, he's probably getting things wrong. But it is interesting sort of the approach that he takes in that series, mostly because like he's taking a whole sort of new way of looking at these things that you wouldn't really get either from somebody taking like a historical or biblical sort of analysis.
Well, it's fascinating to say the least. It gave me a present tense reason to take the Bible serious.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's also the point in a lot of ways. Like Jordan Peterson isn't necessarily, he'll analyze like the Garden of Eden for the actual symbolism in the Garden in that story and what it's really trying to get at. Now he might be wrong about some of the details, but that approach is the most fruitful approach to reading the Bible, because that's where like a Christian and an atheist or a secular person can basically have a conversation about it and more or less agree on at least what it's trying to talk about.
Yeah. And for me as well, like the way that Peterson sort of brought up the Bible, it made it like, it made it in a weird sort of way relevant to me in my own day-to-day life, that even like the way that I was thinking of the Bible as like a historical document of things that happened to people like Noah and Abraham and things like that, I wasn't able to connect with as much as the way that sort of Peterson brings it up. Like, there's always like the story of Abraham sort of leaving his house is relevant to you because you yourself have like this sort of journey that you're
it's a classic paradigm,
a journey from God.
Come out into the promised land and get away from everything and you're going to follow me and be perfect, and this is how you're going to become. It's very similar to the hero's journey in a lot of different archetypal stories. And that's how he approaches it, kind of like Jungian, sort of Joseph Campbell type.
Yeah. So, and then you started going into Jonathan Pageau. Have you seen the recent like debate / discussion between Pageau and Rationality Rules?
Yeah, I made him watch it, or I didn't make him watch it, but
I did it just for Craig, because I generally can't stand Rationality Rules, to be honest.
Right.
But the thing I have against Rationality Rules is he's been doing this thing for so long, and he still continues to generally beat up the easiest target as far as concerning Christianity.
Yeah, gotcha. All right. I see, Josh, you have to head out soon to put your kids to bed. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us. I think we learned a lot. And also, it's just cool to sort of discuss these topics with you, Josh.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on, and I hope I didn't bungle
this was
things.
fun. Anytime, Dr. Josh.
I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I did too.
All right, guys. Well, you have a great night. Enjoy.
Doors always open. Anytime.
Thank you, sir. All right, Craig. See ya. Bye, guys.
Take care, Josh. So, John, did you watch it? I didn't hear your 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I watched it. It's funny. I first started watching Rationality Rules just because, like, I didn't like it. Like, I hate watched him in a sort of way. Like, and also just to see, like, okay, how are popular atheists responding to these sorts of arguments for God? And for that, I found him sort of like a valuable resource in a sort of way, even though a lot of his arguments against the God, a lot of his like debunkings of God's existence through argumentation is like just awful refutations. Yeah. But I was actually kind of surprised and appreciative because like Rationality Rules seemed much more charitable in the way that he was approaching the topic with Jonathan Pageau than I would have expected from him, actually, which may just be saying like I had really low expectations for him, but he at least exceeded those low expectations.
No, I totally agree. The first 20 minutes, he totally hit the low expectations. He was terrible, but then he got into like this groove where I was like, that's how a normal person who doesn't believe in God would interpret a lot of this stuff. Very similar to an Adam Friended type of like. A normal, intelligent person who doesn't believe in God would easily understand religion along the terms that he was bringing up. And for him, it was progress. It wasn't an anti-theist, total bullcrap spiel. It was like, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the thing that Stephen Whitford is going to need to learn in order to sort of like progress in these sorts of conversations is to learn just how much like theology sort of progresses over time. Like he's still under the impression that like, we're stoning witches. I read the Bible and it says stone a witch, and that's the first thing I think of. Yeah. Hey, do we know any witches we should be stoning? Yeah, it almost seems like from his perspective, like Christianity means okay, stone gays, stone witches, punish a kid to death for disobeying his parents, and all Christians that are alive today are just completing their religion incorrectly because they're not actually abiding by these things. He even goes so far as to say barbarism. The barbarism in the text is so clearly destructive to everything that we value today's world.
Well, the thing about that Rationality Rules with Stephen, what he likes to do that you see so often is he likes to conflate all religions as the same, especially when you want to say Abrahamic religions, and then you can pick the worst of each Abrahamic religion and say that it's all of them.
Yeah, like totally.
Islam, Christianity, well, they're Abrahamic religions, and Islam does this horrible thing. So that means that Christianity does this horrible thing too. And it's like, no, that doesn't happen there, but it happens over there. And it's a wonderful sleight of hand for them because they can pick and choose buffet style how they want to criticize religion, and then
Sam
use
Harris.
it as a criticism of every single religion, every of a specific religion.
Yeah.
Sam Harris does that too. He was even doing it with his
Yeah.
debate with Jordan Peterson. You say religion, and he automatically jumps to blowing up buildings and airplanes. You're like, well, that's a certain radical sect of Islam. Well, it's all Abrahamic religions,
Yeah.
That's what religion does. It makes you crazed to the point where you want to chop someone's head off. They all do that. All the anti-theists do that to some degree. Go ahead.
And the thing I have against rationality rules, he's not Aaron Raw because he's not like saying rocks are atheist, but rationality rules has done this for so long. He makes his bones on being against or arguing against religion, and he still just punches the easiest possible target he can at any moment. He doesn't actually invest himself in understanding. But I have to say, when he talked to Jonathan Pajot, he did pleasantly surprise me as well.
Yeah.
Yes. I thought he made real progress because there are certain things that he even said that like a normal person who doesn't believe in God would acknowledge. Like Christianity teaches love your neighbor as yourself, and that's a good thing. And there are good values in Christianity that everybody could agree are good values. He said that, something like that.
Well, he said that he actually stepped over, sort of, anyways, for a moment, at least in that discussion, he stepped over a line saying that Christianity has value, which I had never seen him say before.
Yes. And he definitely said it. And he said, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's real value to some of the ethical teachings of Christianity. And that was like practically my head exploded. I was like, hallelujah, he's saved.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well,
yeah, I wonder
I
if
have a
he's
few
like
opinions on that.
becoming a Peterson.
might.
Yeah. Go ahead.
But Pajot, I like Pajot. I'm a big fan of Pajot. I actually give him money, so I mean I'm a Pajot fan. But I have my disagreements with him as well. Of course, nobody believes anyone 100%. The conversation was interesting because I started the Adam Friended video. I finished it with him and Pajot, and they were talking past each other, him and Rationality Rules. But what I thought was fascinating, in my opinion, is what I thought Pajot really brought out of Rationality Rules was what I saw compared to Pajot is that he has, Stephen has a interesting combination of what, if you're familiar with the unconstrained view plus rigid thinking. It's an interesting combination. He has rigid thinking, I think, because of the way he took things. Because, well, I thought it really showed up when he was talking about, whenever he wanted to say that light and dark are definitively good and bad, or male and feminine, masculine and feminine were definitively good and bad, which, of course, from Pajot's or symbolism, that's not the case. They are what they are. They're feminine, they're masculine, they're chaos and order. They're not necessarily good or bad. But he wanted to make them good or bad. And I thought...
And it's kind of understandable, especially like from within our culture, we have these sort of common understandings or like presumptions that like, oh, if something is light or good, we sort of make that common association of, it's good. Or if something is like referred to as chaotic, that has a negative connotation to it as well. Whereas from sort of the symbolic sort of worldview that Jonathan Pajot is sort of trying to bring out is that, no, there's good aspects and there's bad aspects of chaos. Like chaos can be really helpful because it's rejuvenating. Like if you have something that's dead, then the chaos of entropy can bring about something new out of it. Or in other, like he brought up a really cool, like biblical example as well of like, you have too much order in the Bible when you're taking a census. And like, if you have to know exactly how many troops you have and how much you're growing by, you're like, that's an aspect of tyrannical sort of order that's at play. So it's not just the case that these symbolic like framings of things are just automatically good or bad. It's like there's more to it than just the way that rationality rules was trying to get at.
Yeah, and particularly like Jonathan did say is chaos, light or dark, chaos, feminine, but he also said it was potential and creation. I mean, feminine is also creation. Well, not necessarily creation. Order is creation, but feminine is potential.
Right.
It's where things are birthed. It's the potential for new things. And order is masculine and light and creation. And that goes to, especially when you're talking about the Bible, that goes to the ancient Near East cosmology is one of the things is order equals creation. Something that's unordered or doesn't have a purpose is essentially not a thing.
Yeah, and that's very similar to like what John Walton brings up in his books in regards to like the creation of like the creation of Eden and of Adam is, or it can be taken as sort of like a identifier that is God places on Adam as like his priest to sort of like bring about a temple, like to turn the earth into God's temple in a sort of way. Like Jonathan Peugeot's brother Mathieu Peugeot, he has this book, The Symbols of Creation, which I found like really incredible, just in order to both understand Peugeot's thinking, but also in a way to sort of get a, I guess, ancient sort of understanding of the Bible. Like it brings up like this whole cosmology of the Bible of like, okay, you have the waters below, and waters below represents like chaos, and that's like when things are chaotic, there's nothing there, and so there needs to be some sort of ordering process that occurs to shape the chaos into something intelligible, something like that. And like there's this whole like heaven as like that which imparts meaning into the chaos and turns it into something intelligible, and there's this whole sort of like cosmology, and he does it step by step, and it's a really fascinating book that if anyone that's interested in Jonathan Peugeot's work, you'll definitely love this short book by his brother Mathieu Peugeot.
It's his brother. Is he the same faith?
I think so. Like they're both
Sure.
I think they're both in Eastern Orthodox, but like his brother is like a mathematician or something like that. It's kind of funny. But,
oh wow!
Yeah, I've started that book. I haven't finished it, but anyways, I think Stephen maybe needs to do some mushrooms or something and open his mind up. But it's interesting because I came through Jordan Peterson, then Peugeot, and what Peugeot's work really helped me with was Jordan made me take the Bible seriously. He gave me a present relevance to myself because he was talking about the psychological. And of course, Jordan's theology is off. He's not a Christian. He's not a theologian, but that doesn't matter. And if you study history properly, you'll see that people are this. I've always loved saying, because I've always loved history, is the people are the same all the world round throughout all of history. People are the same. And if you read history properly, you will see yourself in history, or you'll see people in history. And you get that pattern revealed in the Old Testament. You see humanity revealing itself. And but with Peugeot, I saw the symbolism, and then I saw patterns in the Bible and understood that. And to me, that was the first step of the truth of the Bible that I saw, is whenever I started understanding symbolism and patterns of meaning and patterns of reality as expressed in the Bible. That's when I first became convinced of the truth of the Bible. It may not have been literally true as far as a historical document or whatever, but I saw
like
I would
it
say
definitely
a divine reality of pattern.
Right. Yeah, it definitely like maps onto like everyday existence. And experience.
Right, but that's also why it's so useful as apologetics, because there are aspects. When I was making videos like 2 years ago, I was talking about the not the faith claims of the Bible, but the truth claims. So like valuing humility, where Jesus teaches people to wash the disciples' feet. Every idiot can understand the value of humility, and there's even a scientific, you can come up with studies and research about how humility is going to better serve you in actual life. So to hear rationality rules start talking that way, I thought was kind of a breakthrough, because to me it's obvious. But once people start thinking of the Bible as true in ways that they can easily recognize, then it starts to it doesn't necessarily automatically follow, but it could automatically follow. And then we got Iran, and he's going to tithe. See?
There you go. That's how you hook him in. No, yeah, it's there's this quote, I think from David Mamet, that I'd heard, that, and it's probably repeated elsewhere as well, that he's like a Jewish screenwriter, but he says of the Bible that, like, it's not about what has happened, it's about what is always happening. It's what's about is constantly happening, and like that's such a whole, like, yeah, it's such a great sort of way of sort of understanding the Bible from, in a way that makes it like still relevant, rather than just some sort of like history textbook that I think I used to at least read it as.
Mamet is Glenn Ross. Did you ever see that movie?
That's great. That's one of those sorts of movies that is like all dialogue, like 12 Angry Men and stuff like that. It's great for screenwriters.
Yeah, all the Mamet stuff is like that. Most of his stuff was plays, like American Buffalo, and he's big in acting class, always doing Mamet.
Yeah.
People.
But
Ron, what were you going to say?
as far as the video with rationality rules and Pajot, I thought that I did think that the interplay between Stephen and Jonathan, I perceived how, I say he's got a rigid thinking because he can't comprehend symbolism so much. He can't comprehend symbolism. Okay, so, and then I say he's got the unconstrained view, if you're familiar with that, because he thinks that humanity essentially, he doesn't, well, I guess he said don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but he thinks that we can make the correct judgments of what to keep and what to get rid of.
Mm-hmm.
And I am absolutely terrified of that proposition.
Yeah, that's the thing. These sorts of things.
You get is you get the gulag. I mean,
yeah. These sorts of things like almost require this broader sort of collective changes that goes about. Because that's the thing. Like a lot of like new atheists have this sort of weird understanding of religion as all top down, between like, okay, you have these priests or you have the Pope say something, and then everybody else below them all falls in line with that. But that's the thing, there's like this two-way causal sort of pattern going on here, where there's this recognition within the laity, the people of the church, and like they'll be pushed back against the people in charge, and there's always going to be this sort of like two-way participation within religious living that I think a lot of sort of new atheists.
Well, and they also literalize, like what I'm saying. He literalizes the way the fundamentalists and the literalists do, and they struggle with analogies. They struggle with like mythology, metaphor. Yeah, metaphorical truth is like the whole gateway to reading the Bible, so that everybody can understand it, whether you agree with like. And it's usually the point of the story. Like nobody prior to new atheists, nobody was really reading Jonah and the whale about whether Jonah actually literally was in a whale for 3 days. They were reading, there's a whole dialogue between him and God and mercy and forgiveness. That's the whole point of the story.
Yeah.
You know, he's supposed to go somewhere and preach, and he doesn't want to because if I remember correctly, because he's more judgmental than God. He doesn't want these guys to like be saved.
Yeah, he gets mad at God for sparing Nineveh.
Right.
Yeah.
That's like how I'd be. So God's like, spare those people. No freaking way, man. Despite those clowns.
Yeah.
But nobody prior to like, atheists taking on the Bible was really that concerned with the literal, is Jonah in a whale for 3 days? I mean, that's not the point of the story.
I would sort of push back against that. I think that this sort of way of reading the Bible is somewhat of a product of the Enlightenment, where we have this sort of understanding that we can start off all of our epistemology from ourselves and then work from there using reason, just from our own understanding of things, and then build up like from there. Like I'm going to read the text in the same way that like I'm going to take a scientific approach to the reading of the Bible and just take it as it's 100% true, rather than, I don't know. I think that community is very important in understanding these things, and not just community within like a particular church, but also community within tradition and history. Like the quote from G.K. Chesterton that like tradition is democracy of the dead. Like we're actually giving the people that have already studied these things hundreds of years ago and have died some participation
Voice
in how,
at the seat at the table.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and you know, you do see that a lot in Protestant circles, especially with the addition of the doctrine of sola scriptura.
Yeah.
Well, you see that particularly in Protestant circles is like, well, I just read the Bible and I read the Bible and let the Holy Spirit speak to me. And it's like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
You read the Bible through traditions, and you can't help it. And you can't accurately interpret the Bible otherwise. We need the orthodoxy. We need the early teachings. We need the community. You don't just interpret the text on its own, and you don't just you can't interpret it with just the plain reading of the text. And you know, I like to think that I read the Bible literarily. Is a kind of a new term as literature. There's different types of literature in the Bible.
Yeah.
And yes, I do depend on other people for that information as well. And you see, I can get to where I kind of disagree with Pajot is I think there are some literal parts to the Bible as well, but Pajot, I think, kind of sees everything as symbolic. And maybe he's right, maybe I'm wrong, but I think he goes a little too far with it.
Well, I literalize the stuff that's like there are clear like commands and admonitions and directions and instructions. Those things I take as literal, like love your neighbor as yourself. That's something that you're supposed to aspire to as a Christian, you know, to be more merciful or compassionate, things like those are literal instructions to people. So I don't read it as a literalist in, you know, was Jonah in the whale for 3 days? I'm not sure we should, you know, well, it doesn't mean whale, it means big fish, whatever, you know, but yeah. I take the admonitions like, you know, I play before you this day, blessing and cursing, choose life. That means be obedient to the Spirit of God. And I literally try to do that. So in some ways I am a literalist. I think that's what you mean. Maybe. I don't know. Is that what you meant, Ron?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I don't know, believe it or not. But
I don't.
You know, I basically
mostly omniscient, Ron. That's part of what.
But, let's say my default position on the historicity of things in the Bible, especially the Old Testament, I will default to the theological or scriptural presentation of a historical event if the information is fairly even that it did or didn't happen. I'm okay saying, well, it may have actually happened. Of course, my faith isn't built on that. My faith is built on the person of Jesus Christ. I mean, the only historical event that necessarily has to be true for me is the life and death of Jesus of Nazareth and the resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The rest of it, I think, may be true. It's not my faith, but
and I think that's a good approach. I think that's a great approach, is like recognizing what are the things that we are sort of like necessary to the faith, and then what are the things that are also secondary, just to sort of give you a bit of ease, I think, in being able to like approach these things from a more unbiased and objective sort of perspective. And I'd also agree with you that like, if Pajot, I don't know if Pajot necessarily is saying this, that like all the Bible is symbolic, and like I see him as saying that the symbolic understanding is always the higher prioritization in like the different frames.
Well, let me ask you a question, John, because Peugeot is actually a practicing Eastern Orthodox, correct?
Yeah.
And that's a pretty strict tradition.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, he considers himself a kind of conservative practitioner of that strict orthodoxy, but yet he talks like this funky modern guy almost routinely. So
yeah, that's the whole point of his channel, is to sort of be that bridge between traditional orthodoxy and sort of this modern new atheist movement, and I think he has some fair success with that. I mean, like,
totally has success
for Ron's own case, and also myself being interested in orthodoxy. I think he is being able to bring in sort of those Jordan Petersonites that have found the Bible interesting and engaging and relevant finally, and giving them something more, like having some sort of community and tradition to become a part of. That is, I would say, probably his goal. And I think most of his channel is like just the approach that he's trying to make in order to make the symbolic world understandable to the modern day. Yeah. But
right. I'm just saying that his actual practicing faith is pretty strict and pretty like orthodox. It just doesn't sound like it from how he talks, because he sounds like so funky and like, oh, I'm so hip and cool, bro. It's so symbolic. That's all I'm saying. There's a dichotomy there, or a paradox.
Well,
let's say.
Part of that is because typically in the Western Protestants, we're not familiar with the early fathers a lot. We're not familiar with the actual, modern Western Protestants, especially in the branch that I'm in, the Pentecostal charismatic types, actually purposely reject it because, Pentecostals are like 100 years old, so we're still in that rebellious teenagers phase. But
right.
But as far as symbolism goes and literalism, I think it's perfectly valid. For example, in my view, I think it's perfectly valid to say, I actually think it's entirely possible that God literally created literal Adam and literal Eve. I think that's entirely possible. I do think I am a creationist. I do think that God created everything. It may be literal that he created Adam and literally created Eve, and that everyone is descended from him. My faith's not founded on that. But I think it's also symbolically possible, especially what I was talking about ancient Near East cosmology earlier, that things had already existed, but the point of creation, as said in Genesis, is that was when God established order. Because without order, something doesn't actually exist in ancient Near East cosmology.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's kind of the Peterson take, that he says Adam and Eve are kind of like the beginning of the dawn of human consciousness. So you could see them either way, literally or symbolically, as a starting point. Either way, I'm good with it either way. But I don't know, John. What do you think? You're the.
No, I'm interested in Ethan's thoughts, actually.
Yeah, about to actually have something to chime in here. I don't watch Rationality Rules or Jonathan Peugeot, so I've been just listening for a while. But no, you're good. But that's actually this whole idea of order is interesting, because I actually just did an interview too on my channel with Carmen Imes, who wrote a paper about kind of linking this whole idea. Kind of starts with John Walton's view on the whole temple foundation and creating functional creation in Genesis. And she makes a case that Exodus is essentially the same thing with the creation of the nation of Israel. And starting in Egypt, they're just this disordered group of random people who are all enslaved, and it's just a mess. And throughout the whole story, God just sets up the law, the 10 Commandments, and then gives them the law, and sets up all this stuff to make them an actual functioning nation, which is a really interesting
thing. It is. It's literally an establishing of order. Here are the 10 Commandments. Here's law. Coming out of chaos, the wilderness of sin. You're in the desert wandering. So that's kind of literally what it is, and symbolic.
Yeah, she does a lot too, just actual language that matches up, and there's 10 times in Genesis that God says and it was good, I think. And then like there's the 10 Commandments. There's a lot of things. Yeah, it was really interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah, I read like John Walton's book a while back, mostly because of inspiring philosophy. He relies on him quite a bit, and I find that a really interesting, like new approach in regards to the understanding of the Book of Genesis. And yeah, I think having more of these options available for Christians in the 21st century is definitely a benefit. While still being able to like. Find them relevant and meaningful from a very theological perspective as well.
Yeah, for sure.
So
yeah, a core.
Yeah, I was just going to ask Ethan, do you have any other upcoming guests on the channel or debates that you're going to be doing anymore?
In January, I have 2 things lined up. Both should be pretty good. I'm having John DePue and Josh Rasmussen on at the same time to talk about universalism. So that should be super interesting.
Oh, that's totally cool. What's Josh's take on that? I've never heard that.
Yeah, he's a universalist too.
Yeah.
Oh, he is.
Yeah.
So he actually has this great interview with him and his wife on, was it Capturing Christianity's channel?
It was on Adherent Apologetics. We're talking about this book. Yeah. I haven't read it yet, but seems like an interesting little book. It's kind of like a thought experiment book.
Yeah, it's like sort of this dialogue between the different patriarchs up in heaven, or something like that. That's how.
Yeah, it's like God asked a question, like ask somebody a question about like should all these people like get led into heaven or something like that. Yeah, it seems really interesting, and they like goes through this whole like just thought experiment. But yeah, so that'll be really good. I'm excited for that. For sure, because John's pretty adamant about his view too, and they come at it from like a much different perspective. You know, Josh is much more like philosophical, but it was interesting in his discussion on Adherent Apologetics on this too, because he said like the theology, like he was much more open to universalism, like from the Bible. It was more like philosophical positions that like held him back more than anything. I don't know. It seemed interesting, so we should get into some of that.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, it's something that's coming up nowadays, is that sort of topic of questioning of whether we can hope that all shall be saved or whether all shall be saved as well.
Well, part of that is a big, huge chunk of atheist beef with Christianity is damnation, or the whole idea of eternal. That's what I find. That comes up a lot in atheist land.
And it's not just atheists. It's like Christians also finding that morally problematic in regards to like what we can understand from our own moral intuitions regarding things. And like, does that line up with how we understand God is all loving? And so on from there.
Yeah, and I just think a lot too about like how little control we really have over like what we believe and stuff like that. Like I know I've heard you say a lot of times, John, too, like how like just belief in God is just simply like off the table for so many people. And like it just seems, I don't know, it seems unlikely that like when people like you hear like, oh, this Romans 1, like they know God exists and they're suppressing it, like that just seems so ridiculous, like say to someone's face. Like, you know, I had Ben Watkins on my channel not so long ago, and like to talk to this guy, I'd be like, yeah, you know God exists, you just hate him. You know,
well, we
like,
don't say it to their face, we say it behind their back.
Well, yeah, you're right, but
we say it in private. We go, they know God exists. We don't say it to the face, is just rude. You say it behind their back.
Okay, you don't want to be rude when they're burning in hell or something, you know.
Yeah, and I can kind of understand like where Paul might be coming from, especially within that context of like, especially with Roman society. There's definitely the understanding of there are the gods, and then there's also most likely the creator God, which is sort of the one that's more unknown, I guess, than the gods that you might naturally worship and pray to. And like I can understand how that can make sense within that culture, but I think as it is now, people are raised in a sort of like very materialistic frame of understanding reality, that to even think about like we have no way in which to sort of like understand the term God, except for like as some sort of like super being or something like that like created the universe and listens and like is acting. I don't know. There's sort of the difference between like thinking of God under classical theism and also under sort of the neoclassical perspective that I find. I at least think that the classical theistic understanding is more in line with the tradition and also the the church fathers and the I don't know about the Bible. I'm sure there's elements like that's the thing. Like I don't know how much you can get a strict theology just from reading the Bible. I think you require some sort of like interpretive framework from that. And even then, you're going to have some things that don't quite fit with that framework, and some things that like there's ways in which to have multiple theological readings of the same biblical text as well. But anyway, yeah.
Well, like, let me ask Ron Ron, there was a period where you were an atheist or agnostic, right? Did you
Both, yeah.
did you have
Separately.
And I think that's true of you too, Spartan. Did you guys have experiences where you kind of like, hey, that almost seemed like that was God? Like looking back on it now, you go, that was probably God, or that was probably God. Like
I was also pagan. So yeah, I had spiritual experiences.
So you had a lot.
Yeah,
Sure.
just like
Wow,
literally.
really?
Go ahead.
Huh?
Go ahead, Ethan.
Yeah, I was just thinking like when I was like I don't even like I guess I would call myself agnostic. Like I literally just didn't think about the question. Like it's just like I went to church when I was little, and then I started in high school and just didn't go, and just like it seemed like the most irrelevant thing. Like I'm like,
Yeah, that's kind of how I was for a long time.
yeah,
Because I was just like in high school, it was just drinking and hanging out with my friends and smoking weed and chasing girls. And then college was more or less a continuation of that, minus the weed. And then somewhere in my 20s, I started getting interested. But prior to that, it was just kind of like not really relevant to how I was living at all, as far as I was concerned. But I would have called myself agnostic. But even there were times where weird things happened to me that I was like, what was that all about? That's what I'm asking. Is there some type of experiential justification for what Romans is saying? John, do you think yes or no?
Well, I think that the existence of God can be reasoned to. I think, like now, maybe that requires somebody being open to undergo that reasoning process. I don't know. Maybe even not, because like. Well, I'll just say yes. I do think that it can be reasoned to, but it has to require the person willing and wanting to undergo that process. And I don't know, maybe even then, like there's the problem of divine hiddenness. Maybe it is the case that there are instances where God's hands are sort of tied in a sort of way and not being able to make himself known to all people. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it too extensively.
Yeah, I'm like starting. I talked to John like way too much, John DePew, and he's like getting me into Karl Barth and all this stuff. So like talking about like reason and natural theology and stuff, and he just like completely throws that out the window. Like that's all garbage, and we can't, like you can't. None of these arguments work at all, and that's kind of like I tend to agree with that, because like when I first started learning about apologetics, I felt like oh well, these arguments I just need to keep learning more. I just don't understand them, but I'm like I always had this feeling like I really don't see them as very convincing. I mean, like I sometimes they're convincing, but then like that the most convincing argument seems to be the one that gets like destroyed the most. Like fine tuning or whatever seems so convincing, but then like they can look at it through some philosophical lens or whatever, and like exactly what I was thinking is like just garbage.
Yeah, and that's kind of like a dilemma that we're all sort of faced nowadays. Is the postmodern dilemma of like there are many different ways in which to view reality, and so how can you tell which of those ways is most accurate unless you like take some sort of meta perspective on all those different ways? And it's like we don't really have a agreed upon or shared meta perspective in which to compare these different worldviews against each other. It's
yeah, and it's just like strange though through all this. like the one thing that's like never changed in my mind is like the reality that like Jesus is Lord. So it's just like strange that one thing is just like I've never teetered since becoming a Christian. So it's like, I don't know, I have a very strong like intuition towards like a reformed epistemology type thinking or
That's
whatever.
really interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
So yeah,
I
I'm
like-
trying to just like learn more basically.
I really like a lot of what Bart's got to say. Bart.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
read his name too much, so I say Barth too. But like,
Yeah.
John's like a picky guy, so I know he'll make fun of me. So I try and like make sure I
Oh.
don't say it.
So is
I
it
just wanted to
Bart?
show off my big brain.
Bart.
It's Bart.
Okay.
Is
Just
it
okay.
is
So
no
H is
TH.
silent.
It's,
Yeah,
okay.
you're like a noob if you say the
Okay,
th at the end.
Yeah. You just out yourself. But I really like a lot of Karl Barth's theology, and especially from Barth to T.F. Torrance, which I have not got real deep into, which is real deep. But I do disagree with Barth's take on natural theology, although I do understand why he does it.
What was that book that you were talking about, Ron, about Luke? The book of Luke, his charismatic kind of
Oh.
perspective on the book of Luke. Did you read that yet?
Yeah, I have not finished it. I took a long time off from reading anything, so I'm studying back through Luke and Acts, and then I'm going to read it, start reading it again. It's the charismatic theology of Saint Luke and Acts. It's actually pretty fascinating, though.
Yeah, it sounded that's why I remember I remember you talking about it, and I was like, I got to check that out. I think I might even have bookmarked it when you posted a link to it.
I recommend it. I haven't finished it, but it's got some really amazing stuff in it so far. It seems to be, yeah. But it's actually a scholarly book and kind of like a scholarly theological approach to charismatic theology being in Luke and Acts.
Yeah, I think charismatic theology is really interesting because, like, when you read the Bible, like, there's a lot of charismatic events happening, like, especially in Acts. I mean, it seems pretty obvious. And then, like, today, it's just like it's such a weird thing. Like, you're right, like with the actual Pentecostal like denomination or whatever, kind of being the one that took hold of that, and like the theology being very, I would say, like for the mainstream Pentecostals is pretty lacking of like good theology.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily, it's just like weird how those certain things like get tied to that. You know what I mean? Like that has nothing to do with the validity of charismatic stuff and
Yeah.
gifts of the Spirit and stuff. It's really interesting.
Well, Pentecostals definitely need a more, not necessarily systemic theology, but they need a more thorough theology because we are fairly criticized often with not having really deep theology. But that's
Yeah,
not
that's
always.
totally true. Because
Yeah, but-
that's why we get the bad. We're like the odd man out, Ron. We're like the persecuted church within the church. We're like the laughing stock of like the intelligent Christianities. It's like, and we're the because a lot of us are like too like loopy. I think that's really the issue.
Yeah, but then you got like the Reformed tradition where everybody just turns to like Wayne Grudem, and I just like run away. I can't stand Wayne Grudem, but yeah.
But whenever the thing is, whenever I read the Bible, I tried to take every presupposition I had to throw it out the window, which you can't necessarily do that. You can be mindful of it and you can mitigate it to a large degree. I believe that, but you can't take every presupposition and throw it out the window. I tried to, and I didn't have any biblical church tradition that I grew up with, so I didn't necessarily have that. So I tried to read the Bible and let it speak for itself is what I tried to do. And then I started studying theology. But it's through the study of theology that you really come to depth and the Holy Spirit. And obviously, I'm going to say that. But I forgot what I was saying now.
Yeah, I could resonate with like trying to read the Bible without like a lens or whatever. And like when I first became a Christian, it was in a Reformed Calvinist church or whatever, and I just like thought like I remember telling someone I went to church with, I'll never forget I said this. I'm like, I got so lucky that I became a Christian in a Reformed church, so I never have to change my mind on stuff like a lot of people have to do. And I like think of that saying that. I'm like, that was the stupidest thing I ever said.
It's
like,
true though.
I guess. But yeah, like that, it just was weird. I'm like, yes, I'm so lucky. I'm like,
I mean, that's divine providence for you, right?
yeah.
Oh, I remember the point I was getting at is I'm Pentecostal and charismatic. They're two different things. The thing I really liked in Luke, that the charismatic theology of St. Luke book, is he gives an extraordinary definition of charismatic that is not what people typically think of when they think of a charismatic. I can't remember it offhand, but when I became a believer in Christ and a believer in the Bible and a believer therefore in the supernatural as exposed to the Bible, all things were on the table for me. It's like, why not? Why can't God still be active? Why can't God still be creating miracles? Why can't the Holy Spirit still be creating gifts of the Spirit? And if we've already got this happening with Jesus Christ being God incarnate and dying and resurrecting and performing all these miracles, why not anything? Not to say that I think all things, I still use caution, but that's the thing that got to me was the Bible shows a living God. And that's the thing I think that Pentecostals have right, is that we see God as a living God.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I was going to say, Craig, we've been going for 2 hours now. Do you want to end the live stream and we can carry on the conversation afterwards?
Wait, what happened?
Well, I was just saying, I don't know how much longer you want to keep on going.
Why you want to wrap it up? Is there any fresh victims in the live chat?
I don't think I saw Jansen Gunn or Jansen Gunn. I don't know how. I guess probably it's Jansen because he's probably American. Stephanie Trenton is talking.
He's English, actually.
Oh, he is? Oh, okay. That's right. Mark Angelotti's still here. Yeah, if anybody wants to hop in, they can. Salem said he was going to come in in 40 minutes, but he said that an hour and a half ago. So I consider me skeptical of that claim there, Salem.
Oh, Salem was going to come by. He said yes. Salem is just toying with us. He doesn't care.
Exactly.
No, we can wrap it up. It's up to these guys. I'm good either way. We can wrap it up, or we can go for. It's up to you guys.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have anything else to bring up. I mean, I'm down to keep going, but I don't know. Yeah. I'm trying to think. I don't know what to bring up, but.
And there's no fresh meat for the kill in the live chat, right? So
let's see. Jansen was saying that, come on, Ron, fly the flag for us crazy asses. Books are only a guide because God is inside you.
Yeah, we can shut it down if you want, John.
Sure. Yeah, that seems fine. But yeah, I really enjoyed talking with all you. I'm really appreciative of all the guests that came on, Stephanie and Dr. Josh and JB. I know there's some trouble with Caleb trying to get on as well, but yeah.
Thank you for having me on.
If there's anything else you want to say, Craig, or anybody else? Yeah.
Ron, you want to say something about your time on your debut on the Craig Reed channel? You didn't screw up too bad. You weren't that terrible. It was okay.
You're muted, Ron. You're muted.
You're muted, so.
He did screw up. Big time. You're muted.
You didn't screw up that badly until just
See, there I go. I'm a rookie.
Yeah,
I'm a rookie. It reminds me of that Matt dude who went against Idol Killer recently and was horrible.
Was this some sort of debate?
Yeah, did you see that?
It was Matt Slick.
Matt Slick?
Yeah, Matt Slick.
Yeah.
You guys see that?
I did see that, actually.
What debate is he talking about? I didn't see it.
It was on the Gospel
Matt
Truth.
Slick.
It was a pretty good one.
Yeah.
I'd say Idol Killer or whatever, since Warren McGrew. Or whatever. Yeah, he did really good.
Yeah, Warren McGrew. Yeah, Matt Slick was awful, personally.
Yeah. He just wasn't getting it. It was really frustrating.
Well, he did he said what you said whenever you were talking about your Reformed theology, is he never wrong. I mean, heresy is like disagreeing with him.
Yeah, he literally
Yeah.
just like he made a point that like since Pelagius didn't affirm original sin, that anyone who doesn't affirm like original guilt, Augustinian sin, is therefore a Pelagian.
Oh man.
And you're a heretic immediately. And then like Warren was like, well, all right, well, Pelagian followed Christ, so you're a Pelagian.
But I bring that up because I made a joke about that, because one person said that he felt like the debate went off the rails whenever pretty early on Matt Slick accused him of being a heretic. Like, well, you're a heretic, which is probably the actual point where it went off the rails. But I made the joke that when he couldn't unmute himself the first time, maybe the second time, was when it went off the rails, and I just did that. But
Yeah. I found that Idol Killer channel a little while back. I like his stuff for sure.
I do too.
It's like that whole idea of like some of these like reform positions with like original guilt or whatever. And then like, he had his video and he had like all these like reformed preachers like preaching about how like babies are like the devil essentially and stuff. And it was so weird to hear. And I'm just like, this doesn't make any sense.
well, total depravity. I think I personally think Reformed theology fails hard at total depravity, and I think it actually is all the rest of it is motivated by total depravity. But,
well, yeah, and in that sense, like I think that's a good rebuttal to natural theology. Is like all of our thinking faculties are inclined towards sin, and so in order to like know God through natural reason, we would have to be inclined towards God's existence and something like that. So in that sense, I think like I can understand why they take such I don't know, angst against, not angst, but take such umbrage against natural theology from that point of view. And yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
A lot of
and
things also follow from that.
With Bart, it's all about Jesus. I mean, he's saying that you can't know anything about God at all except through Jesus, which I agree that everything we can know about God has to go through Jesus, because he's the full revelation of God. But I also think that natural theology and the Old Testament, that we have have some revelation of God, but the revelation of God is Jesus Christ. But I think the big thing about Bart, reason why he rejects natural theology so hard, is he's building a fence around Jesus, which I can understand.
And against the Nazis had a lot to do with that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they used natural theology essentially to like, I mean, most Christians in Germany supported the Nazis. So
yeah, it's interesting to see how these sorts of like historical contingent like political problems and moral like failings on our part influence our theology from there.
Well, they do a lot, because if you understand the politics of the day, like even the arguments that like I address a lot of the time are based on things that are out there in the atmosphere that people are talking about, aren't necessarily based on my own personal revelations of through prayer and stuff that I would naturally be inclined to talk about. They're specifically addressing the topics as framed by other people. So there's always that context. I don't know if that quite made sense, but I know what I meant.
yeah, I'm reading that Jesus and John Wayne book right now, and that's like all about how like in America it's just gone completely off the rails, and just like our theology of like so many Christians is completely based off politics and where the money's at and all these like random like connections that people have built and bridges that just like don't end up going away. And yeah, it's the way where like Christians are so tied to the Republican Party and just like weird view of masculinity and stuff that has like nothing to do with the Jesus in the Bible like at all, as like this guy who lays down his life for the poor. And yet like we view like the Christian man as this like abusive, basically like patriarchal dad or whatever, who like just works all the time. And yeah, it's really strange like the way these things happen.
Yeah, like this conception of masculinity from the 50s and the nuclear
Billy Graham and
family and all that.
Well, you're right, and there's a lot to that. You're certainly right about a lot of that. I think it's a little more complicated than, as most things, than most people give it. But I just went blank again. I'm probably gone too long.
Yeah. We've been going on for almost two hours, 2.25 hours. So
All right.
this is a good time to wrap up.
You want to wrap it up? Everyone's starting to get brain fuzzy. No,
Yeah.
I agree with what you said, but I just start trailing. That happens when my wife actually literally thinks I'm a moron because I do that like 100 times a day at dinner. I'm like, and she's like, "Did you even hear what I said?" I'm like, "Huh? Words mean what? It's like you're frying your brain with your stupid phone."
It's because you're always on TikTok, Craig. That's your problem.
Dude, you got
attention
it, John.
span is-
You got to join me on there. You
No.
got to start doing some TikTok dances. You can
No.
be
You
the next Charlie
got me to-
D'Amelio.
Yeah.
You got me to listen rationality rules, but you ain't getting me on TikTok.
Just you wait.
Ron. Come on, Ron. Don't let me down. Please, Ron. I need you on TikTok. It's just not the same. You can talk about natural theology all you want, but until you do a 15-second TikTok dance, you just aren't really relevant. I mean, we talk about relevant.
You got to
You're not
appeal to
relevant.
the youth.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
I'll post one of my TikToks. I'll post a Christmas TikTok sometime in the next 24 hours.
Cool.
I'm blown up. I'm huge. I'm too big to fail on TikTok.
Nice. All right. I am logging off. Thanks again to everybody that has joined in and everyone who's been watching us and who will be watching us after the fact.
And look for these type of open streams in the future because this was fun. This is the type of thing I want to do a lot. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we should be doing more of these. So, all right. God bless.
That's it.